Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about riffs? Talking about some of our favorite albums featuring great riffs, sometimes talking to people who make great riffs. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, Justin Swindle, Dylan Adams. Again, for the 100th time, we've done it. Sorry to everyone. 100 episodes down. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know, like, congrats, guys. You guys did great. I appreciate it.
Can you apologize to me?
For bringing you on the show.
You deserve all the pain. Every bit.
100 episodes down. So I figured we'd do something special, right? There's a new album in the works. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I feel like we're going to bring things back all the way to episode 13. Our very first video episode with this guest. We talked about The Darkness Permission to Land, as well as the album that had yet to be released at the time, Ghost at the Gallows, which is out now on Century Media Records. Hot and Heavy, Live in Tejas, also out. Neon Nightmare, Faded Dream, out last year. Great record, out now on 20 Buck Spin. He is also the illustrious host of the Big Riff Energy podcast. I'm, of course, talking about Riff disciple Nate Garrett. Nate, how are you?
I'm good, man. Shout out to The Darkness. I forgot we talked about that first Darkness record. That's the highlight of everything that you just said. Good to be back.
Yeah, we haven't done much since then as well. So it's pretty much been a slow decline.
Deep decline.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really am just glad to kind of bring it full circle and have you on. And, it means a lot. I basically, like I told you in the email, like I learned how to edit basically because we were having you on. So thank you.
I'm honored, man. Look, I'll talk about Wake anytime. I'll talk to you guys anytime. And any excuse to see my boy Sanford here. We don't get to hang out enough. So even if it's digital, it's still worth it.
If you wouldn't mind, our second guest on the podcast, you have a very long history with friend, collaborator. How would you describe the great Sanford Parker?
Fucking animal, dude. Just a lifer. If there was ever a lifer, this man played in Buried at Sea, one of the heaviest bands ever. Played in Minsk, played in Nachtmystium, does solo stuff, playing in Black Cross Hotel. That's right. You guys changed the name, right, Sanford? Black Cross Hotel?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Shit. What else? Dude has recorded all your favorite bands, all my favorite bands, half the bands I've ever been in. Yeah, he's a beast. He's one of my best buds, and I love him. Hey, Sanford.
What's up, dude? Very, very nice intro.
That was impromptu too. I didn't know that he was going to call me out to do that. So if I'd have prepared, it would have been even better.
Thank you guys both for doing this. With the upcoming Wake album, Return of Magik, coming out, I felt like it would be just a really great opportunity to have you both on to talk about a classic record. Nate, I know you've covered this record on multiple times on your podcast. Sanford literally worked on this record. So, Voices of Omens, 2007. Nate, I've heard you kind of describe it as the best of all outsider shit in one record. Do you find that to be pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's a very succinct way of saying stuff that I take way too long to say. Yeah, it was a whole vibe, we'll get into it, but, I heard these guys when I was still in high school in Oklahoma, ended up moving to Arkansas and actually inadvertently attended the album release, for Voices of Omens. That was the first time I saw them. That was the first time I met any of them. That's how, eventually me and Sanford got connected, was through that album. So yeah, but best of all the outsider types of music, Appalachian music, psychedelic shit, Manson family type vibes, and I think that's accurate. Yeah.
My real connection to this was through Dylan. Obviously, Dylan has mentioned many times he is the, prodigal son of Arkansas. Where are you from? Pangburn, Arkansas?
Pangburn, Arkansas, like less than 700 people population, and it has gone down since I've gone back. It's as isolated could get. So this album, upon like researching for the episode, I've heard it for years, but definitely describes and elicits every feeling of being stuck in that isolated area and like having to hang out in graveyards because there's nothing else to really do, like just getting drunk in a graveyard. Not terrorizing anything, but just you're bored, you're doing it. But it is the first time getting to see these guys was opening for like Lamb of God in Memphis at the New Daisy Theater. And it's like a huge bill. Sacrament just came out. I think Gojira playing the States for one of the first times, so on and so forth. And then like I'm getting there 17 and these like just gnarly folks just start rolling shit on the stage, and just my brain couldn't handle it for 30 minutes. I immediately picked up the record. I think I might have even bought it at the booth that night, but that's my first introduction to this band. And since then it's like, all right, here's the great things from Arkansas. Here's this, and then Paul Bearer, obviously.
And you're pretty great.
Yeah.
Swindle, any prior history with this band? You're pretty, you were just like an unmolded, like this is the first time really.
Yeah. I mean, it's fucked up. It's sad, and the sounds from the voices are surprising.
Yeah. Very unhinged sounding record, which I guess brings me to kind of the episode itself. I could spend time maybe getting into the history of this band, but we might be here all night. So I thought maybe a really great place to start would be to begin with their third record. If you walk before you crawl before you die, in 2004. So Sanford, this is the first record you actually like worked with on the band?
Correct. Yeah. That was the first time I worked with them.
How did you become connected with Rwake? I know you're from the South originally. Like, I believe you're from Alabama originally, maybe spent some time in Florida. Had you like crossed paths with them at all before moving to Chicago?
No. Randomly, we ended up getting booked on a show with them. Buried at Sea did. And I knew nothing about the band before that. And like everybody else, these like dudes walked in and like they've been living in the woods for the past 10 years, and we were just like, who the fuck is this? And then they got on stage and just like floored everybody there, just like blew everybody away. So we just like hit it off immediately. We were definitely into the same stuff, into the same vibes. And when they decided to start seeking someone to record that record, I guess my name was like top of the list. And they came in town, St. Vitus, like their very first reunion with Wino was at the Double Door, and they drove up from Little Rock just for that show. And they came by the studio, and I, let them check it out and played some stuff for them. And when they got back home, they called me and was like, yeah, you're the guy, we want to do it with you. So I don't know how long after that it was, probably a few months, but they drove back up. They were like, slept on the studio floor, ate Pizza Hut every day. Yeah, it was insane.
And this is at Volume Studio, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
What did they mention? Like what the like reference, like where were you at this point in your career? Like what bands had you worked with previously? Did they mention like, oh, I heard you did that, and that's fucking great?
I mean, it was mostly the Buried at Sea record.
Yeah, that
was the thing that they heard that like was like, yeah, we love this sound and this is what we want.
Working through that record, like when we were kind of preparing to do this, like I feel like it's equal. It's very abrasive. It's like very dark. What did you learn from that process that you maybe you got familiar with the band that you wanted to maybe carry over or change when you eventually worked on Voices of Omens?
I mean, I don't know. I just kind of threw some mics up and let them do their thing, like just trying to capture the chaos as best I could, and just wrangle everyone, make sure shit was getting done and they weren't getting arrested. But yeah, that was, I mean, I don't know. There was no like magical thing that I contributed, it was just like, just trying to capture what they do the best I could. And, it's kind of pretty much every record I've done with them is the same way. Like they've got their own thing, like the best thing I can do is just stay out of the way, honestly.
I noticed the sound of the drums between the two albums was like vastly different. What did you learn about recording drums that like in between these two albums that made the sound of the drums so like different, I guess?
Well, If You Walk was recorded in the studio I had at the time, and it was an okay room, but I mean, it was like, it used to be like an automotive shop or something. So it was like concrete floors, brick walls. It was just a very like abrasive sounding room. Voices, we did the drums at Electrical, Steve Albini's studio, which was interesting because we were in Studio B and the Stooges were in Studio A. And
for the weirdness?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, whatever the one Steve did. I forget what it's called.
It's that one.
It was funny because those guys, they would do like 2 songs a day. So they would track 2 songs and then Iggy would go to his fancy hotel downtown and the rest of the band was sleeping at the studio. And so they would track from like noon to 5 and then from 5 till midnight, they would mix whatever they recorded that day. So at 5 o'clock, the band had nothing to do. So they would like come and hang out with us. And like every day at 5 o'clock, like Mike Watt played bass on that record. Every day at 5 o'clock, the control room door would open and Mike would poke his head in and he's like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "Come on in, man." And we would just like drink whiskey and smoke weed and like, just hang out with it was just insane. It was like crazy, like recording a Wake album with Mike Watt, like sitting next to me.
I never heard that one, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
There's like that, Dylan, I think you remember that like Henry Rollins talk show when that record came out and Mike Watt is just like out of his gourd sitting in that stool.
Oh my God.
It was like right after that. Yeah. I just feel like Mike Watt anywhere, there's no telling what's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, I had to kick him out of the studio a few times. He would get on a roll, man, and just like wouldn't stop. And I'm like, "Dude, we got to work." I was like, "You got to get the fuck out of here." And he found out those dudes were from Arkansas. So he went on this whole like Black Oak, Arkansas kick. And then he started talking about Vitus because, they toured with the Black Flag and the Minutemen back in the day. And it was just, it was insane. I had to kick him out a few times.
Henry in his journal, get in the van. There's a whole section where he's like, "Mike Watt's in our van. He won't shut the fuck up."
He gets going, man. He's like, we were in the kitchen one day and he had like this little video iPod thing or something. And the Stooges had played a fest and he was like, "You got to check this out, man." And he pulls out this video and he's showing me like this live footage. And so Mike's on one side of the stage with his back toward the band and Iggy's like running and he's like looking the opposite way. And Iggy just plows into Mike and Mike's flying one direction and his bass goes flying the other. And he was so excited about that video. And he like showed me like 5 times. He's like, "Check this out, man." And then I'm like, "That's cool, dude." And then he's like, "Here, just keep it so you can watch it whenever you want." And I was like, "All right." It was insane.
So he gave you his iPod
he
video just so you could watch.
Yeah.
God, he just sounds like a drunken Labrador, like just everywhere.
Maniac.
How long did that process like take? You would think maybe like a couple weeks, or I don't know what
for the whole record.
For the whole record, I guess. Yeah, maybe like recording to.
Probably like a week and a half, maybe. I mean, I think we did like 3 days of drums, and then after that, we probably did 2 songs a day recording. And at that time, I was mixing all analog, so they stayed. Like we probably mixed it in 3 days or something. So yeah, it was probably like a week and a half.
Gotcha. I do like this too because I feel like I should know this is like, there were several people in the band that had been in at this point since its inception, but seems like the first record where they like kind of solidified their lineup for a while. You got Jeff, Chris or Gravy, CT, Brittany, Kiffin, and then Reed, who I think Reed was like kind of briefly in Nachtmystium for like a second.
For a second, yeah. We played like a couple festivals together.
When I asked Reed what happened with Nachtmystium and why he wasn't in the band, all he said was, "It tried to get me to wear eyeliner, man."
That absolutely wasn't true, but I love that.
Well, and then kind of on the topic of he even played in like the Obsessed, right? For a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nate and I saw him with Obsessed, right?
I'm not sure I did. Did I?
I thought when I was in town, we saw him at some club in Phoenix.
Maybe.
I think we did.
Oh yeah, we totally did. Yeah. I forgot all about that. We were recording because when we recorded Curse, maybe we saw the Obsessed, and when we recorded Divided, we went and saw the Melvins.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
yeah.
And I dreamed what song they were going to open the set with, and they opened it with that. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. I think that was the last time I saw Big John.
Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah, solid lineup between those two records. You were sorry to cut you off, Austin, but
No.
I talked to Jeff from Wake and CT on my old podcast. I'm about to talk to them. I don't know when this will come out, but next week I'm talking to him about the new record. But when I asked Jeff about that period of the band, he was saying that was when they were in like fucking boot camp mode, was the period of like, if you walk before you crawl through Voices. Like the wheels were about to fall off of the shit, but they still had it like super together and they were practicing a lot, and it was like a really solid unit.
Yeah.
That's an astute observation on your part.
No,
they were super tight in Voices for sure.
It sounds like it. I mean, you compare both records. It's kind of like we talked about it maybe even with like I Hate God, where you go from like those first two records and then you get something like Dope Sick, which is like still fucking very abrasive, but it sounds like significantly tighter, like the band had like progressed. And when I listen to like both of these records back to back, I feel like there's still a lot of like very dark and very eerie sounds that are coming from this record. But I mean, like it just, there's like this clarity that exists that maybe perhaps wasn't there or like maybe refined before. I don't know. How do you guys feel about going from one to the other?
Yeah, I totally agree. By the time, I mean, they were touring their asses off around that time too. So they were definitely tour tight. By the time we got to doing Voices, I mean, everything, it was all just like one take, everything.
Wow.
That we did.
Fucking bonkers.
I mean, it's a whole 3 years, right? So you'd hope that, I'm sure they just hit the road for just 3 years straight at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
They did. And dude, there was like a whole circuit back then. It was kind of like the MySpace days. There was social media, but like it didn't operate the way it does today. So there was still like, there was an advent of MySpace where you could connect with other bands and like promoters and just other freaks and shit all over the country. But you weren't relying on it so much where it killed off like the organic, almost like the tape trading ethos from the past, But there was like I never went, Sanford, I'm sure you did, Admissions from the Monolith.
Oh yeah, I played it a few times.
Right. In like Youngstown, Ohio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was shit like that going on all over the place. And there was Downtown Music in Little Rock, which I pretty much lived at. I didn't even live in Little Rock, but I feel like I lived at Downtown Music because I was there so much. And there was just a network. And yeah, I mean, I think they were on tour like a lot between those two records. And you had like Yob and all those dudes in the Pacific Northwest, and you had Sanford and those dudes in Chicago, and there was a circuit of like freak shit, like sludge, doom, like just weird underground freak shit.
Maybe this is a good segue to kind of get into voices here. I found a lot of quotes from CT kind of explaining a few things about the record. This is from Metal Rules. The interviewer asked, "What feelings and images do you want to feed onto the listener's mind with voices of Omens, music, artwork, song titles, and lyrics?" And CT says, "Just the South and Arkansas in particular can be a scary place at night and in the woods. There's an evil shit going on down here. Stay the fuck away. Stay in the city. You don't want to come to Arkansas, but we love it here. We want to live here forever. As long as we keep it that way." So it just kind of goes on. We have two people who have lived in Arkansas. Do you feel like that is a pretty accurate depiction?
Dude, my experience there, like, I know that Wake sort of collectively leaned into that, but they didn't lean into it just like talking about it in interviews. Like they lean into it like for real, like 24/7 on some like spiritual type of shit. But my experience with Arkansas is there is something weird about it for sure. I don't know if it's, and everybody kind of talks about it like, with a lot of people, I think it's like an unspoken thing, but with the weirdos that are kind of like fascinated with it, you know, people will talk about like Indian burial sites, or, you know, what happened with the Native Americans. There was some Civil War shit that went on, so there was a lot of weird like death and violence with that. And, you know, there's a lot of bathtub drugs, so half of it might be fucking like imagined, like the ravings of fucking people on drugs, you know. But I felt that from Arkansas for sure, and they definitely represent that and channel that. Or they did. I don't know. I feel like on the new one, they've kind of turned it into like the same power, but more in like a positive type of trip almost.
It's actually Wake is they are the people that are in the woods at night, making sure you shouldn't go into the woods at night.
I mean, growing up there, spending most of my life there, and just looking back at it now, it's, you know, in my mid 30s and going, God, how did I not get arrested doing some of the shit that I did there? Like, you know, small town, you know, finding these old Civil War cemeteries just out in the woods. Like, you just wander around with your buddies. It's like, hey, we're bored. What are you doing? Hey, we stumbled upon this, and like tall boys out in there, you know, just going into the woods, not knowing what you're finding and not knowing what you're hearing, what type of sounds. Like, it's creepy. It's eerie. You know, it's weird. I've got a love-hate with growing up there a little bit, just because it did help mold who I am. But it's also like, God, there's so much shit I didn't know about because I was so isolated. But that's also the vibe of kind of like being in an area like that too. You know, God, it's indescribable. I think Nate described it the best, though. There's this unspoken thing about being in that state for so long.
You got to remember too, like in the 90s, early 2000s, I don't know if it's as dangerous now, but like the Little Rock area where they're from, I mean, they made a documentary called Banging in the Rock about like the gang problems in Little Rock. There was like a whole season of Cops filmed in Little Rock in the 90s. Like the shit, there was like violence, drugs, debauchery. You know, there's the redneck shit, but then there's also like the actual criminal shit going on. And yeah, there's like kind of the southern small town like isolation. So, you know, people like us, we get fascinated with all kinds of stuff, horror movies and metal and weird outsider like country music and Appalachian music and serial killer documentaries and fucking around with the occult. There's like the satanic panic shit. I just feel like if you throw that all in a blender, that explains this band, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. To a T.
You hear it. I feel like everything that's being described, I feel like you can, you know, hear on this record. I think even CT had mentioned there's like maybe one song on the album that isn't about Arkansas, or at least like inspired by Arkansas in some capacity. So, but I mean, it's got everything. I mean, it's psychedelic. There's like black metal elements. It's sludgy. I mean, There's like traditional Southern, musical elements that we've kind of hinted at here a little bit as well. But, Sanford at one point, 3 years later, they kind of like knock on the door and they say, "Hey, it's time for another one. Like, when are we going to lock this down?"
Yeah. So same thing. They approached me again. They sent me some demos and we kind of went back and forth with that for a little bit. And I can't remember exactly what time of year it was when we recorded it, but they stayed. At that time, I had moved to another studio called Semaphore. And the funny thing about that place is it was old Boy Scout center that was that we converted into a recording studio. And people swore that place was haunted. Like bands that would record there all the time swore up and down that they heard ghost or saw ghost or whatever. And CT was all about it, man. Like he would back then they were on the whole voodoo kick. And so he was on that stuff and swearing that he would see ghosts in the middle of the night. Cause we had like lodging for the bands, so the bands would just stay there. We had like bunk beds and all that stuff. So everybody would just sleep there. And he got way into the whole like ghost part of that building. But I mean, a lot of people swore by it.
I think one of the things that we just kind of stumbled upon and doing research, I mean, obviously this is like your career, this is what you're doing. And I had to imagine like you were working on other projects like all through this, but like, the Minsk record, like also shared the same release day. You were released it on I'm talking about the Ritual Fires of Abandonment came out on the same day, same label. You produced both records. It had like same guy mastered it, same artist did it. It was just did those like cross over? Were you like doing those at the same time?
Another interesting fact is they are the exact same length. Total coincidence.
Really?
Oh wow.
Wow.
Down to the second, they were both 59 minutes and something second. But yeah, I didn't even when we were done. I can't remember which one I did first, but whatever the second one was, we were like trying to figure out the total length. And when I looked at it, I was like, no fucking way. And I jumped back to the other one. I'm like, they were both the exact same length.
That's crazy.
And the first tours that both bands did in support were together.
I definitely want to talk a little bit about that. But so again, they come in, how long does everything take? Did they come in like prepare, like they had everything ready to go? Was it?
Oh yeah. They were super tight, super prepared. Yeah. They were way more prepared than we were. For sure. But yeah, they were like I was saying, everything was just literally one take. Gravy's solos, I think we did all of his leads in like an hour or something. And it was I would just cue up the song and hit record, and he would just lay down the sickest lead, and then we'd move on to the next song, and we just did them all like that.
And without revealing too much, I like the fact that you described it as like a fucking powwow, like you guys would be in a circle around him just going to ape shit while he's
he would be in the middle, and we would all be standing around him like yelling and screaming, and he's just like ripping these leads one after another.
I mean, yeah, there's like the one song in fucking particular, like towards the end of the record, that's like incredible. And maybe we should. I don't want to like dominate the conversation. Swindle and Dylan, do you have any like production questions in particular? Or?
Well, since we're on the subject of the guitar solos on this, some bands will do solos and it does feel like it's wank, right? It feels like it's just forced into a song, and every solo on this record feels like it has a purpose. It doesn't feel like it's just jutting out for no reason. So the fact that maybe it's just like these off the cuff solos, seemingly, it's crazy to me, because it feels like they're so rehearsed and they're so dialed into what they are, that it's just so fitting of this record. But off the subject of the solos, obviously CT and Brittany's vocals on this record are fucking tremendous. And my question is, how do you go about mixing or blending those two different styles? Because there's points on this record where CT almost sounds like, image-wise, to like a preacher up on a box, like just holding court. And then you've got Brittany's like shrieking, almost just banshee-like vocals kind of kick in. Like, how do you mix those? Where do you find a frequency range for all of that? And like, how do you go about looking into that?
Well, their vocal ranges are pretty different. There's not an overlap with them, which makes, getting a blend a lot easier. And again, with them, I just would give them a, sure 58 and distort the shit out of it and hit record and like start at the beginning of the song and just run through the whole track, and they would just do it. And then we'd move on to the next song. It was really easy.
Hey, while we're like sort of recently on the subject of the lead guitar, I gotta say, like, I gotta give Gravy his flowers, dude, because that guy should be discussed to me like in the same breath as like a Randy Rhoads or somebody like that. Like I totally believe that a guy like that could just rip, like everything he plays is just sick. Because some people are just born with like a natural ability to just fucking express themselves in like the coolest possible way. And to me, that guy is like the redneck Randy Rhoads, man, and such an inspiring guitar player. So I just want to say that about Chris Graves before we move on.
The cool thing about Gravy is like, he has so much soul in his leads. You know what I mean? Like they're almost like vocal lines. Like that's kind of a rare thing, like seeing someone like Shred is cool, but he has a way of like just bringing so much soul to it. It's pretty wild.
I feel like there were only like 2 songs that had like real solos in it. Did they already know like where they were going to stick the solos, or were you all together like, I think this would be a good spot for a guitar solo, or yeah.
As far as the leads were all arranged. The only stuff we kind of added overdub wise was, just layering up certain parts, like we would add an affected guitar track, or it's maybe like a synth thing that they didn't really have worked out. We would kind of work out that stuff together. But as far as the songs, the arrangements themselves, they were pretty much all set by the time they got there.
Yeah, even like sequencing wise, they kind of just knew how.
Yeah, they always know. Every time they know the first song and they know the last song, and we have to record them in that order.
Gotcha. Oh, really? Jesus.
Because
shit.
When we did If You Walk, I wasn't really paying close enough attention to the tuning of the snares. So if you listen to that record, since we recorded it in order, the snare starts getting lower and lower as the record progresses. So I've since then I've been more mindful of and keeping track of that.
Gotcha. Well, I guess like on the topic of like, some of these tracks, maybe we should just go through the songs here. The intro. So like Gravy walks in with a mandolin, just ready to rip.
Yeah, totally. Same thing. We set him up in the room, and I mic'd it and hit record, and he played it one take. Like we wouldn't even let him do it again. He wanted to do it again, and we're like, nope, that was it, man. That was fucking amazing. You nailed it. That's the one we're going with.
Dude, the reason that there's a mandolin on Curse of Conception is because of that intro. We hunted down a mandolin, and Sanford, remember we found somebody that had a Moog synthesizer, and it was the exact same one that Brittany uses, that we use on Curse.
Yep.
And we were like, what the fuck? So the reason there's like weird Moog synthesizer and mandolin on Spirit Adrift records is because of that intro.
It's very fitting. It's very like intimate. I feel like I'm in the room listening to it.
Well, they were super into Deadwood around that time.
Oh God.
that was
every sample.
Oh my God, that's the ending sample.
Yeah,
all the samples, I think.
Well, there's one I'll get to on the next track that I was able to find, but we couldn't place the beginning of the Finality at all. Like, didn't know what the fuck that was going on there.
I don't think they were all from Deadwood, but there were a lot of samples from Deadwood.
Finality is a guy that's shot in the stomach on Deadwood.
Oh, in the beginning?
Oh.
Yeah, and I think you guys chopped it up and fucked with it. But I rewatched Deadwood like a few years ago, and I was like, oh shit, that's yeah, it's a guy dying. He's been shot in the gut. You know,
That's fuck wild. I'm glad we finally. There's one at the end of that song. I was able to like at least hear what the person was saying to look it up, but it's Rip Torn of all people from the movie Extreme Prejudice. I've not seen it, don't know anything about it, but it's all Rip Torn.
Yeah, all those samples they already had like, ready to go when they showed up. I don't remember what they were on. They might have been on a cassette or something, but they were like, this sample's got to go here, and so we would just fly it in.
The Finality. I think like all great first songs, I feel like this song succeeds at just kind of giving you a taste of like everything that's gonna happen on this record. You get a little bit of I think this is definitely the most like black metal sounding track, like right out of the gate. But I mean, it's just got riffs and so much. Nate, how do you feel about this first song on the record?
That's my favorite Wake song. If I had to pick one, I like a lot of them, and that's also oddly enough like the one song that they would never play live, but it's also the first song I saw them play. Because the first time I went to see them, like I said, I discovered them in high school. I ended up going to Arkansas for school, and I think it might have been the first, or maybe the first or second show I went to at Downtown Music, which was a really fucking crazy. It was like our version of like the Roadhouse in the movie Roadhouse. You know what I mean? Like
which they do sample on the
dude,
record.
Right? There's a reason they started their own joint like that, and every time I was there was a fist fight. A couple times I was involved in them. Everyone was drunk. Everyone was on drugs. There were people literally leaving the mental institution on like leave to go to the shows. Like it was fucking amazing. But yeah, that song was the first song that I heard them play in Downtown Music. And I don't think they played it again other than that album release show until like this recent comeback. But that's my favorite Wake song if I had to pick one. It's just so I have a pretty good idea about what it's about too, and it's not really like public what it's about. And I'll just say it's like I always felt some really, really, really heavy emotions from it. And yeah, it's just real. It's real heavy, scary.
There's a quote to kind of go off of that. CT says, we were trying to make it the most evil track. That and the last song, The Lure of Light, are what we tried to make our most evil tracks, and we tried to sandwich the album between tracks like that. So I think they succeeded. Swindle, Dylan, thoughts on this song?
The only thing I had was like, what went into like, do y'all know what went into them deciding like where to keep the whirring, like the kind of whirring noise parts? Like, do y'all know why they chose like this entire song and then other random parts of the album?
Yeah, that sort of like spiraling kind of that sound is just like all throughout the record.
I don't remember, like, I'm pretty sure they had a lot of that stuff worked out. I mean, there was probably some of it that we kind of just threw together last minute. A lot of those details are gone from my brain at this point. So I don't know. I can't really remember like what all we put into adding all those sounds and stuff. I can't remember all that. I know like B had a Moog, a micro Moog that she used, and I feel like there was some other stuff that we added that maybe I had, but I can't remember what any of that shit was.
Dylan, anything on this track before we move on?
First thing out the gate's the guitar sound on this thing. Obviously it's all over the record, but the guitars are just dirty. They're pushed. You can almost hear the amps just completely overloaded. I love it. I love the guitar sound on this record. I would really, like to know maybe what the signal chain was with the guitars, the amps. I'm not privy to any of that information for this band.
I know Gravy, we use it on the last record. He has a Laney. Do you remember the model, Nate? It's like a
I
100.
think he had a Tony Iommi signature. Maybe before that, he had like a GH 100L, which I was playing for a while too.
Yeah, he had just got that's right. He just gotten the Iommi one. That was the first time he had actually used it, was on that record. So I know he used that. I can't remember what the cab was. He definitely had a Les Paul. And for Kiffin, it was either a dual rec or a triple rec. I think it was a triple. And I think they actually had 2 Mizaboogie cabs. I think that's what the cabs were. And I can't remember what the guitar Kiffin had.
I think it was like a Yamaha, one of those double cut Yamahas.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, I know he had a Mezaboogie. I'm pretty sure it was a triple rec. And Gravy had that Laney. And there wasn't a lot of, as far as the guitars, we didn't use a lot of effects. In fact, it might have just been the gain from the amp. Yeah, it was that stuff was pretty straightforward.
Nice. Maybe I'll use a quote to get us into the next track from CT. Crooked Rivers is about the paths that people take because not everybody has to be an evil motherfucker. You can fight that shit even though it is hard not to take the path when it is all that you're dealt. It's a song about fucked up choices. The whole album is just about fucked up meanings, death, sadness, depression, possession, evil shit that happens to us here in Arkansas. Sanford, do you have any memories from this song in particular, or do you know maybe some feelings about it?
Yeah, they all kind of run together at this
I feel
point.
that.
I remember like blanket, things that we would do, but as far as like song to song, I couldn't tell you.
That's all good. Nate, I could imagine. I mean, the riffs on here, to me, I mean, this is another standout track on the song. I think it has like just about like, it's like sludgy, but then there's also like parts where I'm like, oh, a hardcore band would be like fucking jealous if they came up with this shit. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's the live banger for sure. Every time I've seen them live, that's one where people start going the fuck off. Like you have the weird borderline, like what they're so good at is taking like doom or sludge or whatever you want to call it, but doing these parts that are like really smart. Even if it's like one big ass chord, it's like the timing of it is like, I don't know if that's like And Justice for All influence, or I know Jeff was listening to a lot of Suffocation at the time, but it's got that weird like proggy but super sludgy intro. But when they hit the next part, like every time I've seen them play it live, that's when people start fucking throwing beer in the air and hitting people and shit.
The only note that I had for this is like, this was the first time in the album that like I was like, the sound of the vocals are fucking crazy. the like super fucking demonic voice that's like on the back part of the song. Gross.
I do remember I had a MXR pitch shifter that I would pitch his vocals down for certain things, and then we had a memory man, and I patched it in, as like a aux effects on the console. So we would just send his vocal to the memory man, and we would like fuck with the pedal in real time and then record it back in the Pro Tools. So we had like a track of it. But we would like fuck with the delay time and the modulation and shit while we were laying down a pass.
To kind of piggyback off of Nate's statement about this kind of being proggy in a sense and how it's written, that kind of quote unquote verse guitar section that is like the hammer-ons just all the way through is fucking bonkers. I mean, it's just what you can do with one riff, right? There's kind of variations of that throughout the song, and it's just I think it's just king shit. It's a great rip. Yeah, 100%.
It's thrash. Like CT was involved in this documentary, like forget what year, but it was about like the whole Southern weirdo metal circuit I was talking about earlier. And our buddy Metal Dave from Little Rock, did you know him, Sanford?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Legend. But he says something in that documentary about like, it's Slayer dipped in syrup.
Yes.
Something like that. And
I remember that.
It's just like thrash riffs, just like played by people on too many drugs,
Slow Southern Steel.
Yeah. If no one has watched that Slow Southern Steel, check that shit out. Great documentary.
I try to watch it about once every 2 or 3 years.
It's like that in the wild and wonderful whites of West Virginia.
Exactly.
That's a good one. Dude, I called Mamie White when I was drunk one night because she had some like, she had a, Sanford, I don't know if I've told you this. She had some kind of like a personal assistant, you know, and she was like kind of becoming a public figure or whatever. But this lady posted on her Facebook, "Hey y'all, Mamie's been in a bad car wreck. She's fine, but her car's fucked up. She could use some like good vibes. Give her a call." And it had a fucking it had a phone number, and I was hammered. Nicole witnessed all this shit. I called her and put her on speakerphone. She answered, and she was fucked up, and we had a great conversation. She was super nice, dude.
That's awesome.
It is. That's fucking beautiful. I know. Didn't Jesco? Not to derail this completely, but I just remember we were all living in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Didn't like Jesco come through like at least a few times on tour?
Yeah. He did his little dancing at Tidballs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out Tidballs.
Fucking legend.
We were I think me, Nate, and 2 other people from Bowling Green were at a show at Exit Inn in Nashville, and Jesco pulled up while our friend was like skateboarding and was like, "That was fucking cool, man," and then just like drove off.
The quote that was communicated to me when they met Jesco was, "Boys, I'm traveling the city like a baby goes from titty to titty."
Fire and Fight. I fucking love the intro to this. Like, I think this is like super eerie. The acoustic kind of arrangements with like the kids, you know, playing or something kind of layered underneath. Again, Nate, thoughts on this track in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have pretty much the same thing to say about all of them. I love all of them. This is when like I feel like there's more dynamics showing up.
Yes,
and I can't remember the track listing, but Leviticus is kind of the same way. And it's they just hammer you with the first few songs, and then the record starts kind of opening up. So if they were planning on like putting the 2 heaviest, most evil tracks first and last, and the rest of it being kind of more of a journey, I mean, they nailed it. And I think that concept has been sort of like subliminally implanted in my sequencing with albums too.
Sure. I think, the biggest thing that I really took note from, this section and throughout the rest of the record was just the ability to, like Dylan said, with the variations of like maybe one particular riff. They're so good at like transitioning into like the next section. It's like so effortless. It's just such good songwriting. And then, the kind of interplay between Gravy and Kiffin is like insane, where, they're not playing the exact same thing, but they're just complementing each other so well. Such a great guitar record.
There's few bands as good at that in my book, utilizing 2 guitar players.
Yeah, the guitar arrangements on that record is next level for sure.
I thought the beginning of this song was interesting because like it's a pretty like it's more laid back, it's less aggressive, but the bass tone is fucking nasty. Like
the wah,
it's so aggressive when everything else seems to be like more somber or like chill.
We mentioned like great guitar duos and stuff. There's some Kelleher and Brent Hines kind of interplay going on here with some of the chord choices that are being used, and kind of that Remission, like old Nessie kind of guitar tones and note choices and chord choices going on in here. And I know Swindle mentioned like stuff from like Hearts Alive and Leviathan or Megalodon. I definitely caught that like right out the gate, just those very seasick kind of guitar tones going on there.
Dude, that was that's the signature, certain regions at certain times have signature sounds like New Orleans or the Bay Area or whatever. And for like the Mid-South, so like Baroness, Mastodon, that is, I don't know. It was like a psychic fucking connection between all those people going through the same kind of stuff in the same kind of places. And that's the signature sound of that region at that time.
Another quote from CT. The only song that has nothing to do with Arkansas shit is Leviticus. which is about the battle between science and religion. Basically how Christian scientists believe that the Earth that we live on now is Earth 2, and there was a first Earth, and the only people that survived the first Earth turned out into the angels we know of in Eve, Gabriel, Lucifer, so on, super Christian science and sorcery.
How the fuck does that not have anything to do with Arkansas? That's the most Arkansas shit I've ever heard in my life, dude.
Swindle, thoughts on Leviticus?
I don't have anything relevant, I guess. This was one of the other songs that had that brought back that whirring sound effect.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think this was the only song on the album that had a video. Also directed by Northwest Arkansas filmmaker Bossy Baker. I don't know. That's, again, just keeping it local, I suppose. But
I think they shot the live shit at Downtown Music.
Really?
Pretty sure, yeah.
It's terrifying. There's no other way to describe this track. It is fucking terrifying. The entire way, the melodic motif at the beginning that comes back multiple times throughout the song to keep the theme. What a fantastic track. It being a single is pretty funny. Gravy's got a great solo towards the end of this track that just adds to the legend of this album. This is when I pointed out CT's vocals kind of having this preacher on a pedestal kind of way with it, but the way his vocals hit with that first really just gnarly part as it kicks in, just quintessential Wake.
Yeah. Great fucking song. I mean, I'm definitely hearing some neurosis type parts, which
absolutely
obviously has come up maybe in this band's history quite a bit. But one song I definitely had questions about of Grievous Abominations, which is just the fucking solo song. Sanford, do you remember? I guess we kind of hinted on it earlier, just gathering around Gravy. There's just so much great just guitar work all over this track.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the where he had his cheerleading squad around him cheering him on. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think we did all the solos just in an hour or two or something.
My God.
Crazy. However long the album is how long it took us to probably to do the solos. It was nuts. I don't think he played one solo twice. It was dude was a maniac.
It's I always think, man, can there be too many? And it's I'm kind of thinking now Holy Wars, where there's just one after a fucking other. I'm no, yeah, keep it rolling, dude.
Holy Wars.
Yeah.
Dude, I got a memory about that song. I saw Wake in Little Rock one time, and the attitude of band members would be in flux. We'll just say that through over the years, you almost never know what you're gonna get. But I didn't have a ton of interactions with Gravy ever, but I remember him being outside on the sidewalk or smoking cigarettes or whatever, and I was like, dude, I'm really glad you guys played that Abominations song. I love that one. And he goes, well, we play it every fucking time we play. I'm just like, all right, well, fuck you then.
Dylan, you want to take the next one?
I just want to add one thing to this track, though.
Yeah.
I may have taken an edible in the final listen of this album. And all I wrote in my notes was, it's like a sad Almond Brothers at the beginning of this track, which is the harmonies and everything. I was
sure.
This is fucking perfect.
That totally makes sense.
And I noticed something in particular at the back portion of this track with an effect on CT's vocals. It almost sounds like a reverse delay kind of coming in under it. I may be just making shit up in my head.
No, we did a bunch of that stuff.
Okay. I heard that. It's fuck, that's crazy sounding.
Yeah, at that time, I still had a tape machine, so we tracked it and mixed it in Pro Tools, but I would dump tracks to tape and then flip the tape over and play them backwards and then record it back into Pro Tools.
This was the math joint for me. There was I feel like there was a part that's in 10 and a different part that's in 13/8 or something on this song. And at the beginning, there's a snare hit that feels like it's in a different spot every time they go through the riff. It was weird.
Well, you know more what you're talking about than we do. 13 and shit.
I'm like the I came up listening to like weird like botch and shit. That was the shit that I got into like in high school and after high school. So I've always like kind of just gravitated toward the mathy weirdo music.
Hell yeah.
But that's like, I mean, you kind of said that about like when we did, Macedon Leviathan. There's like a bunch of mathy weirdo kind of shit on that record as well.
Yeah. And I play drums too, so that helps with that.
He's the time signature savant for us.
Yeah. Bridge, we got another sample, I'd imagine, from Deadwood. That's so funny. I love that. I'm so glad we found out. But kind of continuing on this, like I love like these acoustic passages kind of carrying this like theme throughout the whole record, especially into inverted overtures as well. Speaking of drums, Swindle, I don't know if like that drum part in the maybe like the beginning where it feels like it's did you guys like use brushes or something? I don't know. It just felt like it was very kind of maybe that sort of vibe to me, at least, where the drums were just kind of like dragging. I don't know if you remember much about that.
Yeah, I can't remember what we used on that. It might have been brushes or something. I know we were like, banging on random objects in the studio and recording something, just getting like weird samples and kind of placing them in. I know there was like one of the tracks we used some like samples over the snare to like make them sound, like in a cavern or something. But yeah, I can't remember if we might have used brushes or something. I can't remember now.
Have you guys recreated that at all with like some Spirited Drift records? Have you brought in some weird kind of foreign objects into making some fun little noises?
I feel like we have, but I know like if you look at the liner notes of Curse, there's like some weird shit in there. We think like analog fog, and I don't know what the fuck that means. That wasn't even that long ago. That was like 2016 or something, but yeah, it's cool. Like if you have some extra time, it's cool to get weird. I always heard about like when Black Sabbath was doing Volume 4, Bill like hung a anvil over a bathtub and would hit it, and he kept changing the water level in the bath because it never could sound right, and he did that for like a week and they never used any of it.
God.
They gave us too much money. They just
that would be nice. We guys like us don't have that luxury, but we'll bang on some shit sometimes.
we don't have an anvil above the bathtub money.
Was it I Hate God? Wasn't there like a song where they had like from the album we covered, where they were like banging on a trash can in the studio or something like that?
I'm sure that's just a normal I Hate God thing.
Yeah. Well, the first song on Dope Sick, Mike is like just breaking bottles and shit.
Oh yeah.
Almost got like kicked out of the fucking studio. This is a great. I mean, I think this might be like the slowest track on the record. It feels like a funeral march. Dylan, any thoughts on this one?
Cleaner vocals from Brittany, like kind of a rarity, right? You get that very mournful, kind of cleanly sung line at the beginning of it that does sound like a funeral march, right? It's a really melodic track. We obviously did a Thou deep dive last year, and I heard a lot of that in this track with, how they're pacing and note choices and everything. But again, it's the South, right? There's a lot of those motifs that carry on from band to band. Great fucking track. It is maybe the most melodic track on the record too. Just a really cool kind of let me up in an album like this.
Let me up.
Right.
And then we get to the final track, the Lure of Light. I guess the second evil track of the record, the second most evil track. How do you feel about this being kind of the ending track to close out the record, Nate?
Yeah, it makes a statement for sure. I feel like that's why they probably put that other song right before this one, because it's just like it'd almost be too much if there wasn't like some kind of little reprieve, But yeah, I mean, the first time I saw them, they played the whole record from start to finish, and I didn't even realize that until years later, because I don't think I had heard the record yet. I think I had heard a couple of songs, but getting to hear the whole record was cool because I'm pretty sure this is another song that they don't play live all that much. But yeah, it's fucking heavy. It's evil. It's almost like you're just crushed already by that point, and it's just like the final nail in the coffin.
I think that was the one that we were like using crazy samples on the snare, if I remember correctly.
There's a lot of dense noise happening. The
sure
song
is.
is very dense.
We definitely pushed a lot of the noise on that one. I think the idea was just to make it as nasty and relentless as possible.
Ended off on a fucking bleak note. There, there's like, to me, there's this weird long lost Black Sabbath riff at about a minute, 5 seconds in this with this fucked up spin on it. I mean, I've made the joke to Austin and Swindle multiple times that Sludge doesn't exist out of Louisiana, but like this is Arkansas Sludge. Like this whole fucking track. This is exactly what this is. Great way to close the fucking record out for sure.
Yeah, literally just that whole thing, and then fuck you. Like
that's the attitude.
So, closing out 59 minutes, as we mentioned before, they definitely toured the shit out of it. As we mentioned, we got, some dates with like Total Fucking Destruction kind of towards the end of the year. They really just toured the United States pretty heavily for the next couple of years. But Sanford, you mentioned early on in the episode that you guys had done your first initial dates for both of your records, maybe kicking things off in Memphis on April 5th at the Buccaneer. Do you remember any of these shows in particular? Remember any particular things that kind of stand out in your mind?
Oh man, every night was a fucking shit show. But yeah, I mean, I got some stuff I could say, but I probably shouldn't.
Don't incriminate.
No. Statue.
But yeah, that was, I'm surprised, somebody didn't end up in the hospital or dead from that tour. It was pretty wild.
And then Nate, do you remember, I don't know if did you mention the venue? Was it Juanita's that they did the release show at, or was it a different one?
No, it was Downtown Music. It was their twisted version of the Roadhouse. If it was run by like, if the Jesco White family and the Manson family had like an alliance,
yeah,
that's Downtown Music.
It sounds like a Rob Zombie movie. It sounds like
it was like the stories. We could do 2 hours just on that place.
Yeah.
Like the stories that you hear, the things that you see. Like, remember Jeff telling me, I'm going to leave the person unnamed, but they were like closing the bar down one night, and this guy walked in and they had a mop bucket and all this shit out, and this dude just grabbed a bottle of bleach and drank some bleach because like the bars were closed down. I don't know why he didn't go for the whiskey or whatever, but he went for the bleach. But no, yeah, I saw the album release there. I met everybody that night. I definitely met CT that night. I think I met Reed, and I met the rest of the guys. The more I would go to Little Rock, I kept running into them and stuff. But it's like what Sanford said, when you first, like, I had heard them in high school. I'd never seen them. I never looked up pictures or anything like that. I heard If You Walk Before You Crawl, and I loved it. It reminded me of Mastodon and stuff like that, the early Mastodon. But like Sanford said, when I saw them getting on the stage, it didn't click with me that was the band. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting, like, they looked fucked up, but they had like an aura too, that they were just like dangerous or something. They weren't like assholes or anything like that. It was just, dude, I was 18 at the time, and I was just like, this is the coolest this is not what like a rock band is supposed to look like. These people look like they're gonna fucking kill you, And dude, just seeing them so many times there at home base, and I swear it's like there were times where you feel like everybody in the room's like levitating like an inch or two off the floor. I've only seen a few bands ever that had that kind of power. I want to talk about my favorite time seeing them. Saying favorite time is kind of fucked up, but the most memorable time is at downtown. There's a lot of one-way streets in downtown Little Rock, and Weed Eater was playing and one other band. And after Weed Eater got done, I had just got the CDs of my band in Arkansas at the time that Sanford actually recorded. That's the first time we ever met. We met because of Wake, because I loved Voices of Omens so much. I was asking him, like, who'd you record with? Whatever. Got linked up with Sanford. But I grabbed Shep, the guitar player at Weed Eater. I had a t-shirt and a CD for him. And we went in my car. We were listening to the CD and had some Evan Williams in there, drinking Evan Williams. We get out of the car and we walk to the corner where downtown is. And I still don't quite have the story straight. I get different versions from people that were there on what exactly went down. But I think what happened was there was a dude on a motorcycle running from the police, going the wrong way on a one-way, and he hits a car head on.
Oh, no.
Flies, and everybody's outside because it's between bands. Weed Eater just finished and Wake's about to go on. And this guy flies and he like hits this giant like electrical pole, like a steel electrical pole. Like, I'm not gonna get X-rated, but it was like fucking gnarly. And the kids come like pouring out of the car. Everybody's drunk and shit because it's downtown music. And it was just like, it was fucking chaos. And the kid that was driving, or like one of the kids in the car, is like trying to run away, and he's like in shock. And I grabbed him, and people are like talking everybody down and shit. And it's like it's just chaos. We literally just see this guy like die, or what? He didn't die like immediately, but it was fucking gnarly. And everybody's like, okay, people are freaking out, and it kind of settles down. And then there's like a hush, and they're trying to like save this dude's life, and everybody's kind of like, whoa, like just taking in what just happened, and it's all quiet. And then CT comes out the door and goes, hey, y'all, Wake is still playing. Everybody get the fuck inside. And everybody just went inside and watched them. And it was fucking, and they channeled it, man. But that's the environment that this band came out of.
Everybody's just stared during their set. Everybody, I'm sure it was just that 1,000-yard stare from everyone in the audience.
Yeah, it was fucking gnarly.
Well, I was thinking too, more recently, like a couple years ago, you had like maybe like a weekend run of dates with Paul Bearer and Wake. Has much changed in that amount of time?
Yeah. And the reason like Sanford, gentleman that he is, like withholding details, and the reason that I would also withhold details is like everybody, not everybody, but a good portion of the band like made it, got through all that crazy shit. They have kids and shit now, and everybody's doing really good. And I mentioned it earlier, like I feel like they took with the new shit, they kind of took that intensity and all that pain and shit and have like flipped it into a positive. And it's cool because that's kind of what they've done with their lives too and stuff. So
and they're all sober now, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, we're all.
Which is funny because I haven't really hung out with them since they've gotten sober until we did this last record, and I was like, well, this should be chill, this will be a different experience. But I swear they're more fucking insane. They're like more insane sober than they were on drugs. I don't know how they do it. They're even crazier.
Well, all that to say, and I don't mean to gloss over. But there's a lot, and we're at 100 episodes, and we need at least 100 more to fill. So I'm gonna leave some of that alone. But they put out Rest. We kind of mentioned the documentary Slow Southern Steel that CT worked on as well. But 13 years later, we get this record that is definitely out now. It's definitely out, and you should check it out. The Return of Magik. Obviously you kind of mentioned a few things, about the kind of the room and how it was, but 13 years is a long time. And I know this is your job. Like, this is what you do. I mean, when they come back in the studio, does it feel just kind of like, is it like riding a bike? Were there any hurdles to, kind of working with the band, or was it just kind of business as usual?
No, we just fell right back into it. The difference, the guitar players are different from, I guess Rest was the last record, but Yeah, but I mean, those guys are amazing players, amazing people, so that was easy. I mean, it was an easy record to make, you know. And I love all those people like family. I mean, they're closer than most of the family I have, you know. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It felt natural, and we just kind of fell back into it.
It sounds fucking incredible.
Oh, man.
Nate, have you listened to it? I'm sure you've heard it already.
Yeah, I got it sitting behind me.
Oh, yeah,
I
you
don't
sure
know if
do.
you can
Yeah,
see
I
it
didn't
on
even
the
see
shelf.
that.
I'm also severely fucking sunburned. Holy shit. I got the sun coming in here. Been outside a lot. Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. It's just as powerful as any of the other stuff, but it's got this new it's got a new type of power, new type of energy or whatever. It's they've redirected all that shit towards something different. And you know, the new guitar players, I feel like they're doing a great job at like honoring what the band is while also kind of like offering some new takes on stuff. Like John Judkins, who I've known forever, great dude. He's like a Nashville guy. So you hear some lap steel and shit on the first song. And I feel like that's kind of like just a new flavor, you know?
I mean, that first song alone, I mean, right from the gate, like when that spoken word, and so it was said, it was like, I was like, what is happening? Like, this is awesome.
When you get to the Jim Dandy track, like the minute I heard that, I was like, oh my God, what am I listening to? This is fucking perfect. This is a psychedelic trick, or a trip like no other.
They had samples back in the day about like how great it is to do drugs and shit, and then now they got Jim Dandy telling you not to.
Yeah, it's pretty fitting. That studio, that whole experience was crazy too for multiple reasons. I swear this band is haunted or cursed or something because it's like not in a bad way. It's just like the weirdest shit happens. More so than any other band I work with is pretty wild.
Well, you know, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You know, maybe as we kind of close out the record, you know, Sanford and Nate, you know, listening, kind of talking and sharing some of these details about Voices of Omens. You know, what do you think the legacy of this record is? Like, if, you know, it's obviously lauded now, but like, you know, maybe like 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, like, what do you hope people kind of look back and get from this record, you think?
Well, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
And I doubt there ever will be. Even the new one is great, but it's not the same. That's just a very specific thing. It's real. It's like if you're hanging around in those circles back then, everybody you know that's had any encounter with that band has 100 fucking tall tales that are like mostly true, just shit that you would never believe. So it's just, I mean, it's a testament to making something that really sincerely represents like what you're going through, where you're from, what you're into. And I feel like, yeah, I think it might even be more appreciated now than it was when it came out. Sanford might know more about that than me, but yeah, I'll always talk about it. It's one of the biggest, I mean, hearing that record changed the course of my life, literally, because it put me in touch with Sanford. I dropped out of college, which is the best fucking choice I ever made, and just started making records again, you know? So I owe a lot to that record. And yeah, I'll still be listening to it in 10 years for sure.
Sanford, you know, having worked firsthand with the band, toured alongside them, you know, how do you feel about the record, you know, these years later? Like, what do you look back? It sounds fondly, obviously, but,
Right.
you know, how do you feel about Voices of Omens?
It's one of my favorite albums, you know, not even like one of my favorite albums that I worked on, just like one of my favorite albums. When we were making it, I knew, you know, it was a special record, even though, like Nate said, it wasn't like, you know, super popular when it came out, but it was a different time, you know, like if that record would come out now, I feel like it would be a completely different story. But at that time, you know, it was well received, but it just wasn't, it just wasn't like a big thing. But just for me personally, it was a big deal, and I loved working on it. Again, like those people are family to me. Um, so yeah, I feel like I don't know. I hopefully Relapse does like a re-release of it, maybe remaster or something to kind of push it.
They did reissue it
Yeah.
actually recently.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, hopefully it gets some new life in it. That would be awesome to see people experiencing it now, for the first time.
Can you imagine? Like, there was no TikTok in 2006 or 7, so we got Liebling going viral for looking like Bobby Liebling or whatever.
Yeah.
But can you imagine? Like, remember when CT puked at Maryland Death Fest?
Oh my god.
And he sort of went viral like before going viral was a thing. Like, and we were all kind of just like, well, that's just what he fucking does on stage. Like, that's just part of it.
Yeah.
So, but can you imagine if there was TikTok then? It would have fucking gone super viral, like actual virus type viral, bro.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, listen to Voices of Omens. Check out the new record, The Return of Magik. It's out now, like I said. But should we end with some recommendations, some things we've been listening to? Maybe go around the room really quick. It could be heavy, whatever you've been checking out lately. I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, the new Nite record, Nite. I think it's called like Cult of the Serpent Sun. That record's good. The new Rwake record, Return of Magik. Those are my 2 albums to beat this year. I doubt anything will beat them. I did hear, I'm worn the fuck out on death metal big time, but I heard this Phrenelith record, that band from Denmark. That shit's really good. Reminds me of Ulcerate a little bit. That's what I'm listening to. And then just shit, I'm limiting myself to like nothing post 1986 because I'm trying to write and I don't want to hear these fucking weak ass TikTok riffs.
Sanford, what have you been listening to?
To be honest with you, probably the only record I heard in the past year that I haven't worked on was the new Cure record.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is great. But I don't listen to music, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The last thing I do in my free time is listen to music. So yeah, all I know is the shit that I've been working on.
Dylan, what have you been checking out?
Honestly, aside from the new Rwake album, I have been listening to the new Propaghandi single like on repeat. I became a fan of this band with their Victory Lap release during the pandemic. I just dove headfirst into like skate punk and stuff that I never really got a chance to listen to. And this track is awesome. It's timely. They're Canadian. This album was written like as Trump was getting ready to like, sell everybody that he wants to be president. And this was before the statement of, Canada being the 51st state was made and all of that. So the guys are angry. There's a lot of like 80s metal influence to it as well. Cool harmonies, really catchy shit. I also want to add one thing too. As this episode releases, I had a chance to actually see Rwake at one of the release shows. I will be seeing them on the album's release date.
Right. We're on a Terminator timeline right now.
We're on Terminator timeline. So looking forward to that. That shit's going to be, or was a lot of fun, I should say. Also, shout out to my 2 buddies in Arkansas, Joey and Norm. They were able to actually hit the release show in Little Rock as well.
I'm going to recommend the second single by Idle Heirs, Pillow Talk. Again, post-metal, Sean from Coalesce, yelling, singing, sometimes doing both.
I'm going to recommend Blackout by this band based out of Seattle. Kind of death metal grind. Caustic Wound, like a minute and a half, just fucking filthy, disgusting shit. It's going to be out on a record called Grinding Mechanism Torment on Profound Lore Records, April 25th of this year. Definitely looking forward to it. The artwork's great. It's like this very, again, filthy looking sculpture. It's really, really cool. And then I'm going to recommend a few other things. Spirit Adrift, Ghost at the Gallows. Check that shit out. Again, when we did our first episode with Nate, it was about to come out. Fucking love that record. Hot and Heavy, Live in Teos. You can find that digitally on Bandcamp. Spirit Adrift has some festival dates this year in August overseas. England, Germany, Portugal. How are you? You ready? You prepping?
Oh yeah, yeah. And we're actually, I don't know when this is coming out, but I can go ahead and say it. We're playing Austin on May 31st, and I think tickets will be available. Spiritadrift.com. It's like our first show in Austin since 2022, and it's our first show period since like September or October 2023. And it'll be our only North American show. So spiritadrift.com if you want to see us in Austin.
Neon Nightmare, Faded Dream, $20 spin. Considered maybe the possibility of kind of translating that live? Has that idea crossed your mind? I'm sure. Maybe.
Dude, I got people up my ass about that. And if I wasn't such a ate up, cynical, jaded fuck, I'd be all excited about it. But nah, there's a guy trying to book that band that's like at a pretty prominent booking agency, but I keep telling people we need a keyboard player that looks like Elvira. She has to, like, I'm not doing it live, period, unless we have like an actual keyboard expert that can nail that shit. And she has to look like Elvira. And then I'll consider it. But until then, that's a studio thing.
I love that. And then Sanford, you worked on the latest Pelican record. I'm looking forward to Flickering Residence. Definitely love all of the tracks that I've heard live so far. I know you were working with a local band, Nequiant, as well.
Yep.
And then also you mentioned you changed the name, but I saw it was Black Cross Hotel. Can you like disclose anything on that? Do you guys have any shows coming up? Are you working on anything with that particular band?
Yeah, we're actually playing with Integrity in a couple weeks.
Oh, no shit.
In Chicago. And Lair the Minotaur is on that show as well. We just wrapped up a new record, so it's getting mastered soon, and then we're still not sure exactly how that's getting released, but we're still working on that. So it'll be out sometime this year.
Can you disclose what the new name is, or are you kind of waiting to?
Well, the new name is Black Cross Hotel.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was confused earlier.
I mean, we changed it a long time ago. It was originally called Guest, and having Guest as a band name is not a great idea.
It's
like when you look at the flyer, it looks like nobody's been announced yet.
I genuinely thought that a little bit earlier. I saw that and I was like, oh, I don't wonder who they're playing with.
So we're like, man, you can't Google the fucking band name. How do you Google band? Black Cross Hotel, easily Googleable. So you can look that up whenever. But we'll have a new record out sometime this year, probably fall-ish.
Perfect. And of course, the Return of Magik, we've mentioned several times. It's out now through Relapse Records. They got some upcoming shows in Louisiana, the 11th and the 12th, Bears in Siberia, Shreveport, New Orleans. Check it out. Guys, thank you so much for letting us talk your ears off and pick your brains about this record. It means so much to have you guys on our 100th episode. It's crazy.
Yeah, man. Thanks. This is fun.
Follow Sanford, follow Nate for all updates on their projects. For us, you can follow us at Riff Worship Pod, Facebook or Instagram and Twitter. But for myself, for Nate, for Sanford, for Swindle, for Dylan, we'll see you next time on something else. Bye.
Peace.